digestive tract. Yeah. Then comes the anal, then the phallic snack. Yeah. Take it to the fridge. Latent phase. There is no sex or you don't misbehave. From genitals on, then it's sex you crave. It's just that changes make me feel this way. Take him to the chorus.
Okay, just a little warm-up. You can finish the rest of that song if you want. There's an amazing number of songs about Freud on YouTube. And I love talking about Freud because, boy, he was an interesting guy. A little bit of a whack job. Really some wild ideas. But he did a lot of cocaine. I'm just telling you. I saw his office in Vienna, and there were a lot of papers on why cocaine is good for you. He did start out as a medical doctor. Students always ask me, why do I have to learn this guy if he's so wacky? Well, he's historically important to psychology because he was so controversial. He really motivated other psychologists to start coming up with other theories that sounded more rational. Some of his stuff makes good sense, so I'm not going to throw it all out the window. I think the defense mechanisms that we'll talk about later are actually pretty good. But let's start talking about Freud. All right. So Freud thought that there were 3 levels to our consciousness. We have our conscious level, kind of what we would have called short-term memory, whatever we're thinking about at any given stage. We have what he would have called the preconscious, so stored memories. That's like our long-term memory from the memory chapter. But then he thought we had this seething pit of like sex and aggression called the unconscious. And it's where all our little dirty bits are hidden, repressed memories, negative impulses that we have. And we couldn't consciously access this, but it's always churning and seething and affecting our current behavior. And he really thought that the unconscious determined much of our behavior. And then on top of that, besides the unconscious, we have these 3 pieces to our personality. Okay, we have the id, the ego, and the superego. Okay, and so according to Freud, when we're first born, we are all id. And you can almost think of id stands for instincts and drives. Okay, and it functions on what he called the pleasure principle. If you're old enough, you know the song by Janet Jackson. Okay, and he thought that, like newborn babies were all id. They only thought about, what do I want? What feels good to me? Change me, love me, feed me. Okay. And so just completely selfish and focused on pleasure. Then, according to him, at around 6 months, okay, thankfully the ego starts to develop. Okay. The ego develops and you get, the ego's what functioning on what's called the reality principle. It's the rational part of our personality. It's the most in touch with reality, whereas the id is completely submerged in unconscious. The ego is the part really in touch with what's going on. So at this point, the ego has to try to keep the id happy because the id will not be denied. Okay, but it's trying to do so within the confines of reality. So the id's like, hey, there's a little kid over there that has a donut. I think I'll kill him and take it, okay? Whereas the ego's like, you know what? Let's just borrow $1 from mom and buy our own donut, okay? So again, this develops around 6 months, thank heavens, because, a kid that could walk and talk that was all id would be ugly, okay? Then, in the phallic stage, and we'll talk about why that is later, in the phallic stage, according to Freud, around 4 or 5 years of age, we develop what's called the superego. And you can really kind of think of this as the conscience, our sense of morality, our sense of right and wrong. But because it's Freud, it's not quite as straightforward as that. He had a very extreme view of this. He thought that your superego was striving for moral perfection. It functioned on the principle of the ego ideal. Okay, it wanted moral perfections. So rather than kill a kid for a donut, your superego would let you literally starve to death before it would steal a donut. So now the poor ego is stuck in the middle of these 2 extremes, and it's got to keep them both happy. So here's the id going, sex, I want to have sex all the time. Let's go have sex. And the superego saying, no, we can never have sex. Sex is bad. And so the ego's like, let's get married. Okay, kind of keeping both of them happy. Okay, so those are the three basic pieces of the personality. Now we get into the really weird stuff, which is his psychosexual stages. Okay, so Freud thought we went through these stages, that we had different erogenous zones. Specifically, he focuses on genitals, mouth, and anus. So in areas where there's a lot of nerve endings, areas that are sensitive to touch. And he said that children's went through these stages where the sexual energy is focused on different parts of the body, okay? And so oral stages, gosh, what's he say? From 0 to 1.5 years of age, I think. So baby's first in the oral stage. And, you know, if you think about it, if you watch a baby, like everything ends up in their mouth, right? Everything gets stuck in their mouth. Now, back with Piaget, we said it's because it was a way to explore the world. Freud's saying they're getting a little sexual thrill in there, okay? Now, according to Freud, at each of these 5 stages, oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital, we will see this conflict between what the kid wants and what society wants from the kid. So at oral stage, the big conflict is weaning, okay? The little kid's like, I want to breastfeed till I'm 25 years old. And society's like, no, you got to stop, okay? And so depending on whether the mom is too lax or too strict, this can go badly, and the kid could end up fixated at the oral stage. Fixated means symbolically stuck, and Freud said you could see signs of that in the adult personality. So those of you that are smokers, you know, that weaning didn't go well. People that drink too much, people that talk all the time, people that are sarcastic, people that bite their fingernails, always chew gum, always have to have something to drink. He said all those people were fixated at the oral stage. Then we moved on to the anal stage. So I want to say this is like 1.5 to 2 years to 4 years. So according to Freud, kids are getting sexual pleasure from retaining and releasing poop. Okay? Feces. All right? And so, you know, and if you look at kids this age, they are pretty into the whole poop experience. And the big conflict at this stage is potty training. The kid's like, no, I want to poop when and where I want to poop. And mom and dad are like, please poop in this thing here when we tell you to poop. Okay. So again, if the parents are too lax or too strict, then the kid could be fixated. And these are probably some terms you've heard before, right? So if I'm fixated at the anal stage, I could end up being either anal retentive, and you probably know that term, or what he called anal expulsive, okay? If you're anal retentive, it means you're very stubborn, you're overly neat, you're overly organized, everything has to be in control all the time. Or you could be the opposite, anal expulsive, like a monkey in a cage throwing their feces around. You're very messy or disorganized. If you ever came to my office, you know I was anal expulsive. So that's what the fixation looks like at that second stage. Phallic stage is, you know, like, go by what it says in the book, but phallic, I want to say, is about 4 years old to 6. And this is where a lot of weird stuff occurs, okay? So the sexual energy is in the genitals. And again, if you watch little boys at this stage, their hand is down their pants fairly often. So sexual pleasures in the genitals, but it's very focused on self-love at this stage. But the conflict at this stage is really interesting. And it's kind of different for boys and girls. So we'll start with the boys. So little Johnny, according to Freud, is in love with and wants to get it on with mommy. Sorry, not kidding. But alas and alack, you know, daddy is standing in the way. And if daddy finds out that Johnny wants to sleep with mommy, he may cut off his wee-wee. Okay? And so according to Freud, Johnny is suffering from castration anxiety. I cannot make this stuff up. Okay, so castration anxiety motivates Johnny to give up mom as a love object, okay? And it is at this stage that Freud said Johnny starts to identify with dad, starts to act like and identify with dad, This is where he starts learning his gender identity, in the hopes that someday if he acts enough like Dad, that when he grow up, he'll get a woman just like Mom, okay? Freud also said because he gives that mom as the love object, that's the moment that the superego develops. That's the moment when he becomes a morally, upright person and go, hey, I don't want to sleep with my mom. I must be a moral person. Anyway, so that's when the superego develops. Okay, that's the boys. The girls, slightly different. We want to, get it on with Daddy. We are suffering not from castration anxiety, obviously, but penis envy. Gosh, we wish we had one. And why don't we? Okay. So we're in love with Dad. And we, the closest we can come, according to Freud, to fulfilling our penis envy is at some point to get pregnant and have a little boy and have our own little penis to work with there. So, I know, it's weird. Anyway, so we're suffering from penis envy. Dad doesn't seem to be cooperating with us, so we start to give up on Dad. We start to identify with Mom. And again, someday, hopefully, we'll marry a man like dear old Dad. Often that's for girls, it's called the Electra complex. But Freud said since we really never thoroughly give up Dad as a love object because we don't have castration anxiety to motivate us, we always kind of stay a daddy's girl, and because of that, our superego doesn't develop as well, so we're morally inferior to men. Yeah, okay. All right, so we talked about identification. We'll come back to that, though. We talked about fixation, being stuck. Okay, next stage is latency. About 6 to 12 years of age. It's that period when, like, the boys have cooties and the girls have cooties, and you're playing in homosocial groups, meaning the girls are playing with the girls for the most part, and the boys are playing with boys. According to Freud, you get a break from all that sexual energy because it gets shoved all the way down in the unconscious. And so you are focused on learning your gender roles. So the girls are playing dolls and Tea Party, and the boys are doing, aggressive things, whatever. Okay, so, and then around 12 years old, we hit the genital stage. The sexual energy again gets focused on the genitals. And at this point, you don't want to play with yourself. You want to play with somebody else. So you seek out an adult heterosexual relationship. Don't get me started on all the weird things Freud had to say about homosexual relationships. But we're going to stop there, and we will come back and do defense mechanisms.